And good evening, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the African American Athlete. I'm Rickey Hampton with my great friend and frat brother, Michael Roberson, coming to you on a Thursday evening. It's been a while, Luke. You've been on the road and things been going on, man. It's good to catch up. Good to see you. By the way, today is my anniversary, the Silver
Okay.
Six.
All right. Happy anniversary.
November 21st, I think it was 3 in the morning. We crossed the burning sands, man. 1976. So
Centennial year. Wow, nice.
yeah, man, always a special day, man. And as you well know, it's so good to be part of this illustrious bond. And I'm feeling, man, I should have put on some Kappa gear tonight when I came out here.
Well, always representing. Well, check this out. Check this out, though. And I'm gonna send this to you later. But I had the Stanford coach just out of the blue. I'm sitting there recording, right? And I'm gonna edit that stuff a little later. And he said, in the middle of the interview, while I asked him a question, he said, "Oh, you're a Cowboy." I said, "What?" I said, "Okay, yeah." But I was more surprised. I didn't get a chance to give you.
Is he Greek?
No, just yeah. Not that I know of. He might be Greek, not a Divine Nine Greek. He might be Greek, PWI wise, but
you know what, man? Hey, that Kappa Alpha Psi make you take a step and like, whoa, wait a minute.
Hey.
You know you're dealing with a hell of a man.
Right. So, but yeah, and then also definitely since the last time we've been on, I think, I made that step into the life membership.
Yes, sir. Congratulations to you on that, man. Yeah. Because we hadn't been on about 3 weeks, man. A lot of stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, Mike, so, I keep peeking over to the left because I'm watching Cleveland and Pittsburgh. Your old stomping grounds. Too bad you're not there covering this one. This would be a fun game to cover tonight. It's snowing in Cleveland, 10-6. Old school AFC battle between the Browns and the Steelers. Only thing bad about covering this game, you have to drive home in the snow afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. and here's another thing. Remember I talked about that whole Howard University debacle? Yeah. So I had a similar situation happen this time with the Niners as I was planning to fly back to Wisconsin for the game against the Packers. The Niners are playing the Packers this weekend. But, right on cue with what the Niners have been doing lately. They gave me some runaround about they don't have enough space for visiting media. So, so I'm gonna switch that around and kind of like do some stuff with the Raiders. So we'll see. I got a birthday coming up, so I might be doing something there, and it may include us, me reuniting with our great friend of the show, even though he's an Omega. Hopefully, I could run into D-Led. So
going down
I had a chance to finally run into Darren Smith, who's a friend of our show too from Kansas City. So when I was down there covering the Chiefs, I had a chance to run into him finally. So that was cool. We didn't get to do our obligatory picture, but it still was cool to meet him. So hopefully if I work this out, I can run into D-Led down in Vegas. So we'll see if that comes to fruition.
I talked to D-Led the other night, man. Hey, Mike, speaking of getting around, you have covered and followed women's basketball and done a great job promoting that sport and covering that sport over the years. Following the Stanford Cardinal. Last night, Gino Auriemma won his 1,217th game, making him the all-time winningest coach in college basketball, in Division I college basketball.
Right.
Your thoughts on that?
And we need to throw in the additive that it's also women and men, because people will just
Right.
automatically assume he's a
Right.
men's
All
coach,
the
but no,
time.
he's a
Right.
women's coach. But he passed, and he surpassed a person that had both women and men's record, but it absolutely was the women's coach, and that was Tara Vanderveer. So he surpassed her because, for one reason, she's not coaching anymore. She just retired. So this is her first year not coaching. It's still bizarre. And matter of fact, they just dedicated the court at Maples to her. So if you ever go to Maples, it's the Tara Vanderveer court now. So it has her insignia, all that on the court. So but Gino was like, meandering in the periphery while Tyra broke the record, but he was right behind her. So you knew it was inevitable that he would eventually get it, especially if she retired before he did. So so he broke the record. So for the men's side, he broke Coach K's record, and then for everybody and the women's side, he broke Tyra's record. So yeah, he's up there by himself. And then along with that, the most national championships. He has 11 national championships, which passes John Wooden's 10. And so he's already up there in another stratosphere with the national championships. But, now he has the record to go with it. So, yeah, he's definitely going to go down as probably the greatest coach ever if you could just go by accomplishments.
Man, but and it is a accomplishment, man. He gets a shout out. All those great coaches. I was on the radio here talking about in Detroit talking about. Well, it's just women's basketball. I mean, what do you mean?
I know.
I mean that what? Look, it's high level basketball. You got to prepare your team to play. You got to recruit good players. If you don't do that, whether it's women's basketball, pee wee, whatever, you're going to lose games. And those people who are able to prepare their teams to play and win. And Mike, I used to say the same thing about Eddie Roberson back in the day.
Right.
When he was coaching Division II. It does not matter. You gotta prepare your team to play. Right? I mean, there's losing coaches at Division II.
I agree with you, but let's not forget though, you have different levels of HBCU football too, though. So, like I said, and I was talking to someone else about this, that Grambling, TSU, FAMU, Southern, Jackson State, they're like the Power Fives of the HBCUs.
Right.
If you really think about it, TSU was like the Notre Dame of the HBCUs because they were independent all the time. Yep. They weren't attached to a conference. So when you look at it that way, remember, it was 1A, 1AA. And 1AA was like the Ivy Leagues, maybe the military schools and all that. And at that time, in the mid-'80s when I was in college, I remember looking at a list, the highest winning percentage for 1AA schools, Tennessee State University at the time. I think Yale was second. So
I remember that.
It's not like it's, a huge level below. And then same thing for women's basketball. If you say, well, hey, because you can't play together, why would you diminish what the other one is? Especially when he's won 11 championships and one of his players who won the last 4 championships before him just won a WNBA championship. And maybe the greatest player in WNBA history, also one of his former players.
Yeah.
And then let's not forget the humanitarian award for Maya Moore, another one of his players. So he's littered the WNBA with not good players, great players. So
that is a great point too, Michael. That is such a great point. And I was also going to say, hey, there are dozens and dozens of coaches who could not do that at that level. But what you have in the time we've been doing this show, you've seen the growth of women's college basketball kind of explode.
Right. Well, I mean, and I wasn't at the very beginning, but I was in college. Remember when you were working in Nashville? Remember, it was all about Pat Summitt back then.
Right.
Pat Summitt was the dominant
University,
force. She
University
made,
of Tennessee.
she made women's college basketball relevant, and that was the first dynasty if you really look at it. And then, shortly thereafter, after I had finished school, all of a sudden now Tara got her first national championship, and of course my homegirl Sonia Henney was on that team, so I was absolutely vested in Stanford at that point. So I kept an eye on Tara during that time. Then they won another one a couple of years later, and they were always a relevant team from when she took the helm in '85 until she just retired last year. So they were always a relevant team, and they got their third one during the pandemic, which was a bizarre time frame. But so that's the way you look at it, is that it was all about Pat Summitt. I would say late 70s, definitely in the 80s, it was about Pat Summitt and UT. And look at some of the players she produced. Candace Parker. Okay? And then and the weird thing about it is that Tara won with not only my homegirl Sonia Henney, but Jennifer Azzi, who's from
where?
She's from East Tennessee, in Knoxville area. So she's from that area. Somehow she ended up out in Palo Alto.
She got out of
I always said, how in the world did you get her from Pat Summitt? And I think she's from Oak Ridge, maybe somewhere around there.
Yeah, that's right outside of Knoxville.
Right, exactly. So she's from East Tennessee, and somehow they got her. And then I also asked her, I said, what made you come to my hometown to get Sonia? Because Sonia was like the young lady of our home area for Wisconsin and that whole Midwest area. Sonia was big time. And then next thing I know, I'm like, whoa, because I was at TSU when she got recruited out there. And I said, whoa, she's going out to Stanford? So, and that was a big deal, being from the Midwest, and you go way out here to this Western, to the Pac-12 or Pac-10 back then. So,
and then I was covering the the University of Tennessee men's team back then.
Right.
And the women were outdrawing the men.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
in basketball at University of Tennessee.
Well, I mean, just think about it. That's what I had over there. Even though during the Montgomery times, they actually, the men's team would get more props for a hot second, but Tara made that was relevant over there. Like I said, they were in the Final Four pretty much every year. So the women's team was the predominant factor over there at Stanford. So I've seen it from that perspective. And then when I was interning at 4 and 5, I saw how UT was back then. It was all about the women's basketball team. Even though you have a couple flashes with Allen Houston and our frat brother, then of course his father was coaching, and we won't get into that. And then
I covered them.
Exactly. So, but I remember, even though we were in Middle Tennessee, we still, because UT just had that gravitas where they would be the whole state they would represent. So we were covering them, because I remember I had to record the games and edit the highlights and all that from UT games, especially the women. So I remember that.
Yeah. Hey, let's keep it moving, man. And let's stay in college before we get to the pros. Now I want to go to college football. To no one's surprise, Travis Hunter says he is going to turn pro next year. And many people call him the number one player in the draft. He'll definitely go top 5 for sure, if not first. It just depends on the need. If anybody goes in front of him, maybe his teammate Shadur Sanders, but we're getting close to the Heisman Trophy selection, and I voted for that thing for years. I wish I was voting this year because Travis Hunter would get my vote. I'd vote for him twice if I could.
And he's
doing what he's doing, Michael. Right.
And he's doing more than what his predecessor did. Charles Woodson. Charles Woodson, was a DB. Every once in a while he played offense. This guy is doing both sides, which you usually do in high school. He's doing this at the Division I, Power 5, well, Power 4 now. Power 4. So man, this is unprecedented. And, let's not forget what the big argument was. How could Charles Woodson win when you got Peyton Manning and Ryan Leaf and all these guys? How in the world did he get the Heisman over those guys? But at that time, they said, hey, Woodson is like a dominant force. He led Michigan along with Greasy. People try to say, well, Tom Brady won a national. No, Tom Brady was deep on the bench after that. Greasy, the son of Bob Greasy, was the quarterback for that national championship team. Just like when people think Ty Detmer was the quarterback for BYU when they won. No, it was Robbie Bosco. I had to embarrass these guys that thought they knew sports back and forth. I said, Detmer did not win that championship. Was that?
That was, I believe, 97. I covered a lot of those teams.
97 season, 98. Let me tell you the weird scenario with this. Let me tell you the weird scenario.
Well, I was just going to say this. Well, go ahead, then I'll go. Go ahead.
Okay. So that year, it was, this is before playoffs and all that stuff. So for all you youngsters out there that say, what are these guys talking about? Yeah, they would have weird stuff happening where they vote on who the national champion is. One year we had Georgia Tech and Colorado, and about 3 teams got the national championship, and they left Miami out. So the scenario was that, hey, Nebraska is up for the national championship, but so is Michigan. And then we'll see what happens in the bowl games. So I happened to be in Miami. It was a weird scenario. So it was like 97. I remember I just got in my car, and one of my buddies, my roommate from college, said, hey, man, what are you doing for New Year's? I said, I'll probably be in Chicago or something. He said, hey, you want to go to Miami? I said, dude. I said, I know I've been out of school for a while, but I don't have that Miami money. He said, no, I got to hook up. I got to hook up where we get a flight, blah, 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 blah. And that's a whole different story. But after the planes, trains, and automobiles, if anybody knows that movie, that weird scenario happened where
you were still in Nashville, Mike?
No, I was back in Wisconsin. So I let me see. My show. I didn't have my show at the time. I was at this FM station at the time. So I drove down to Nashville, and then this is what's so crazy about it. Somehow we missed our morning flight, and that turned out to be a disaster because we had to, in order for us to get to Miami, we had to fly back to Chicago. So I'm like, dude, this is where I was supposed to be in the first place. I said, if we don't make it down to Miami before New Year's, New Year's turns to the new year, I'm gonna be upset, and I'm gonna be here in Chicago at O'Hare, but my car's in Nashville. What is this all about? So we finally got a flight back down to Miami.
That sounds like a movie, man.
Yeah, but we were trying to figure out why, and I said, man, think about it. UT is playing, so all these people from Nashville are flying to Miami. That's why we got diverted like that. So we finally got down there. We did our New Year's Eve thing and all that stuff, and had a good time in Fort Lauderdale. So then we're driving over by, I think it was called Robbie Bosco Stadium back then. I think that's what it's called. So we drove over by there. I said, hey, man, let's just see what's happening over there. So, of course, we get one of these scalpers, whatever. They say, hey, you guys want to go into the game? He said, what are you talking about? He said, well, I got tickets. I said, yeah, right. And he said, $20. And we were like, and the weird thing about it is that there was a tailgate there too, right? The tailgate was $20 to get in. And guess who was at the tailgate?
Who?
BET. So remember our Jamaican sister that used to work there, Rachel? Yeah. I was like, what is BET doing here? And this is Nebraska versus UT. I don't see the connection.
Right.
But for some reason they were there because once it was a national championship game, one of them. So we got in the game, and like I said, Nebraska had Ahmad Green, and then of course Peyton Manning was on UT. So I'm sitting there like, man, I'm saying Peyton Manning's last game. So I was kind of going for UT because then Michigan could have been national champions on their own. So Nebraska beat them, so they got part of the national championship. And then we had to wait till later on for, because it was on the West Coast. We had to wait for later on to see if Michigan was going to beat Washington State.
They beat Washington State, right.
And they beat them, so then it was co-national champions. And then they said, okay, Rod Woodson, earlier had gotten the Heisman, because the Heisman is usually around my birthday. So I remember he got the Heisman, but people still saying, well, Peyton and Ryan gonna prove him wrong by upsetting them in this game. Maybe UT could beat Nebraska, but it was a bizarre weekend. But just by happenstance, we went over to the stadium and ended up watching the national championship game. So I'll never forget that.
But that is quite a story, Mike. Yeah. What I was saying about Woodson, and Woodson was a hell of a player. 18-13 Pittsburgh just scored, but when he played offense, man, they just throw him something in the flat,
right?
And he get in it, and he makes something. He could make something happen. This kid's running routes, man.
I know.
He runs a full route tree, man.
And they're getting some incredible interceptions.
Right, he's a lockdown corner. Yeah. What scares me about this whole thing, I think his coach, Deion Sanders, who people keep saying could end up in Dallas somewhere, but I think Deion is such a lightning rod. I am hoping people won't take out their animus towards Deion on that kid. Because, Mike, he is clearly the best player in college football.
Right, but once again, you can have a situation where his own teammates going to cut out some of his votes. Somebody might say, well, I can't vote for him because his teammates also up for the Heisman, so they're going to kind of like cut each other out. So hopefully they don't pull that nonsense.
As Shador's a great player, but I mean, we've seen great quarterbacks before. We ain't never seen this on the high. Like you said earlier, this is what cats do in high school when they just the best athlete on the field every week. But I think people hate on Deion so much, they might take it out on the kid.
Right.
I mean, we know how people can be in this country. We just saw that, right?
Yeah, we just saw that. Yeah. And then not to get all into the politics, because how people will paint that the wrong way, as we saw with one of our social media platforms. But think about this though. Think about all these people with a certain complexion that was sitting there going, yeah, I'm right with this person. And then all of a sudden he sets up his cabinet. What are we missing there? What's wrong with this picture? So I'm like, okay, how do you guys feel now?
Right.
You did all this bump dancing.
What's the dude down in South Carolina? Tim Scott.
Yeah.
There you go, dude. There you go. But anyway, let's not spoil our time on that nonsense. But and Mike, speaking of Colorado, they got a chance to get into the playoffs.
Well, let's throw in the caveat though. It's actually 12 teams now, so now there's going to be a lot more suspense now. Now you won't say, well, this is just the SEC Invitational. Now all of a sudden, now people are complaining that, well, it's tough on us now. NIL's messed up the SEC and blah blah blah, and that's why the coach left. So now all of a sudden it's whining. But before, when it was like so unfair that you can have SEC lose 2 games and still get in the playoffs, like, no, it's because the competition is so much better. Now Texas is down there leading the SEC. Then you got Oregon leading the Big Ten. What's going on here?
Oregon in the Big Ten. I'm still trying to get used to that, man.
I know.
So we will see what happens. This weekend is going to be an important weekend for a lot of teams, including Colorado, if they want to get in. Hey, do you think Deion would leave? He says he's firmly planted in Colorado.
Well, guess what the people in Jackson, Mississippi are saying? Yeah, we've heard that one before. So, so think about that. So, because, remember how it was a whole just party for HBCUs. Like, everything's going to change. Look, we get this 5-star player that comes down to Jackson, Mississippi and plays for this HBCU. Because remember, that's where Hunter got started. and then of course he followed Deion to Boulder, but before it was like a whole renaissance for, oh my gosh, the HBCUs are going to be in a whole different realm now. And the way it used to be back in the 60s when they had to go there, now all of a sudden they could choose to go there. It's going to be just a renaissance, but that lasted 1 year. And then, of course, the Southern Heritage Classic got all messed up because of that. Because Deion said, hey, Jackson State will not be playing in this because we can get more money this scenario. But that messed up, that whole thing, because now Jackson State is regretting it. And then, of course, TSU was upset that now you got to play what? Arkansas Pine Bluff? No
Right.
diss to them if anybody's listening, but it's just not the same as playing against Jackson State because, like I said, there's levels to this where, once again, you got the power HBCUs, which I've said before, Jackson State and they're in Mississippi, Jackson State and Graham, Fam, all those guys that are the traditional definitely for football powers. Because, you get your Howards and all that, but the MEAC was usually looked at as second tier from the SWAC, and then, of course, TSU being independent. So I don't know, if we'll have that again. Eddie doesn't have the charisma like Deion has, but this is helpful to be, in this position now if they do make the playoffs and stay ranked like that and then do something big. And then maybe the recruits will start coming there. But there's also other turmoil going on with TSU with the whole financial thing. And that's a whole other show.
If the state, give me my money.
Exactly.
So, yeah, but hey, props to Eddie and the Big Blue Tigers. They're 7-3 going into this weekend's games. Still got a shot to get into the FCS playoffs. And that's the first thing you got to do, Mike. Get in there, and you never know what might happen. You might get hot and make a run. But speaking of hot, as we transition, how about Dalton Connect, man? What a find by the Lakers, drafting him with the 17th pick in the draft. He had 37 points the other night. Lakers are off to a really good start. 10-4, one game behind Golden State for the number one spot in the West. Oklahoma City is 12-4. The Lakers are 10-4. And if Connect continues to play like that, they will be a team to reckon with. I hate to say come playoff time now because it's so far away.
Right.
But I like what I see in LA. Of course, LeBron's doing what LeBron does.
Right.
I mean, he's just amazing. And now you got this added punch that you can get from Connect. If you get that consistently and you keep Davis healthy, they can beat anybody.
Right. And here's the thing, though. You get, people saying like, well, I don't know how they missed him. They make it seem like he played at Towson State or something. This cat was at UT. So he's in the SEC. He was lighting them up like that.
Right.
Anybody has any sense saw that this dude was legit. It was like
he was the player of the year in the SEC.
Right, and he was considered one of the best players at UT history. I mean, they were comparing him to Allen Houston, the way he was just lighting them up back then. So it wasn't. But once again, this is how people say, "Oh, well, we need to start making some of these scouts accountable for their missing things like that." Because you can't sit there and criticize somebody like, let's say what happened with Greg Oden, right? Well, how ridiculous was Portland not to draft Kevin Durant? So let's look at this. You had a skinny scorer, or you had a 7-footer that was ambidextrous. Which one do you think you should use? Yeah. But unfortunately, he got hurt. And then right. Then you get back to 84. People want to land-based Portland again. Once again, 83 draft. Houston drafted Ralph Sampson. Why did they need Olajuwon? They should have drafted Michael Jordan because they had Robert Reed and rest in peace, Louis Lloyd. They were good players, but you got a chance to get Michael Jordan to go along with Ralph Sampson. That's what they should have done. But instead, that messed up the whole draft because then Portland needed a big man because they had Clyde Drexler. They didn't need Michael Jordan. They just drafted Clyde Drexler. So the next best big man was Sam Bowie. Unfortunately, he was injury prone. So sometimes you just have bad luck.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know when guys are going to go down.
That's what I'm saying. So when you sit there and, land based, but then when you get guys that hits on a good player that you saw was good, but you said, nah, let's get this unproven player and get him instead.
Well, I think one thing about Connect, he was only at Tennessee for 1 year. So maybe they thought he was a one-year wonder. But all you had to do was look at the way the guy played.
That's what I'm saying.
He had an NBA game at Tennessee.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like,
so let's stay in the West and kind of look at what's going on over there. Golden State's number one. You're right there watching them every week, every day. 11-3, surprising start, and you go all the way down. Dallas, who made it to the finals out of the West last year, sitting at 8-7. The Timberwolves 8-7 in the 10th spot. Sacramento 8-7 in the 10th spot. I mean, once again, it looks like everybody's going to be bunched up. It's going to be hard to separate over there. Houston's off to a good start at 11-5. And Memphis has Ja Morant back, although I think he's out right now. They're off to a good start at 9-7. Yeah, any thoughts on what you're seeing out west?
Well, once again, it's too early to tell, but what everybody wants to see, you get, especially from out here, is like, oh, well, Clay, who felt disrespected that they didn't really play him last year. And, of course, Steve Kerr is going through all kind of stuff with him, his camp, and then also Jason Tatum's camp from the whole Olympics fiasco. So a lot of people are blaming Kerr for, oh, you're the reason why Clay is in Dallas. But when they picked up Buddy Hield, not only has he made up for that, he's been shooting lights out. That's part of the reason why Golden State got off to this good start, because Buddy Hield was like an excellent replacement, and he's younger. And, think about it. Clay wasn't doing a whole lot, even though, he thinks that he should have been a starter. But for some reason, Kerr felt like he needs to come off the bench, even though Hield is coming off the bench, but he's coming off and being electric right away. Clay sometimes would, not be doing much, and it seemed like he was a liability. So you got that whole dynamic that he's going to a team that was just in the finals, so now he's going to put them over the hump. He's going to be the piece they need to win it all. So for them to have this slow start, now people are taking shots at Luka again about his defense is still bad. Of course, they'll probably start criticizing Kyrie pretty soon, saying that, well, he's always a team cancer. So we'll see. We'll see if Dallas stays
Luka's out
500. They're gonna start, pointing fingers at Dallas about, here we go again. You guys made it to the pinnacle of the championship series, but you couldn't get over the hump. But instead of coming back even stronger, you guys have regressed. So people are going to start taking shots at them, especially when their football team is going through what they're going through. So it's going to be maybe some sadness in Dallas. And let's not forget the baseball team is also the defending champs. So we'll see if they can up until the Dodgers just won, but they were the defending champs until then. So we'll see if Dallas now becomes a sad state of affairs, that the football team with Dak out now looks abysmal. And then, of course, the basketball team, if they don't get back to where they were, they're going to say, what's going on here? Because remember, the year before, they were terribly disappointed and didn't make the playoffs. So are they going to go back to the team, or are they going to go back to the team that went to the finals? So
and right now they got Doncic is out for at least a week. It's been so many injuries to start the year off. Paul George is down.
Yeah.
And we're gonna get to the East in a minute because I definitely want to talk about what's going on in Philly. But just a lot of injuries. Uh, 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 Oklahoma City lost Holmgren. Uh, he's down. Uh, Kevin Durant was down the other day. Of course, not Kyrie. Uh, Kawhi Leonard is always. I mean, really, it's time for him to think about, should I even try this anymore? I mean, he is always hurt.
Even during that Toronto run, remember he was hurt in San Antonio. That's the reason why he ended up getting out of there, because him recovering from that injury, and they said, "Hey, man, you're not doing it quick enough," or you had Tony Parker making comments about, "Hey, I had this happen and I came back," and then of course Popovich makes a comment. So he said, "Man, get me out of here." So he ends up in Toronto, and that worked out partly because of the Bucks fell apart, and they put that wall up and compromised Giannis's game. But then after that, he's back to being injured again. So, and think about it, he got injured then, but let's not forget the other injury that he had when Pachulia stepped under him in that series against the Warriors, when they were actually blowing them out at the time. And then when he came down, that team just fell apart, and the Warriors had a huge sigh of relief and went on to win the championship. But once again, they've had some fortunate situations happen. So I don't know if they're going to make another run with this team. People are thinking they are now because they're in front in the West. But let's not forget, this is a marathon, not a sprint. So anything can happen.
But Mike, you can't. How can you plan? You can't rely on him, man.
Well, that too, yeah. And then, but his team,
Zion Williamson,
his former teammate,
indefinitely.
Well, just think about how the people in Philly are saying, like, not only we got to deal with Embiid being hurt all the time and pushing reporters and everything else, we got this guy that we just signed thinking like, okay, this is going to get us over the hump, and he's hurt again. So
right.
I'm sure the people in Philly are pretty frustrated about this, because we've had the process for, over a decade, and then it still hasn't resulted in that. And back to that same year, remember, Philly had Toronto beat. And then let's not forget, Kawhi threw up that miracle shot from the corner that bounced around and went in. And once again, another reason why Philly didn't win that series, Embiid was hurt throughout that series. So
well, let's talk about Joe, because
right.
in a team meeting, his teammate Tyrese Maxey called him out,
right,
saying that man, you got to be more dedicated. Just can't come in late and things like that. And apparently, Embiid took his criticism well. What he was pissed off about is that the media got a hold of it. And he said whoever leaked the team meeting is a piece of you know what.
Right. Well,
Mike, the thing about the Sixers are off to a terrible start. Even when he's played, they haven't been able to win. I think they're 2-11 now. They're in the bottom of the Eastern Conference, 2-12. The Washington Wizards are in front of them.
Well, let's not forget that team in my hometown area. They started off horribly too, and they've righted the ship a little bit now. They're a little bit better, but yeah, it's a disaster going on there too. Because you're hearing that Giannis and Doc are butting heads. So
right.
we're gonna have this situation, and then of course, each one has a championship, so you can say, hey, you know what, coach, you're not what we need. I've won a championship with someone else. And then, of course, Doc can say, hey, look, I won a championship myself, so don't – and went to another one,
right.
But lost to the Lakers. So, who gets the upper hand here? And then, of course, it's always a threat. Well, Milwaukee better acquiesce to whatever he wants because he might leave. I'm like, you know what? At this point,
Exactly.
At this point, what are you really giving the Bucks anyway?
Yeah.
It's always, I don't believe in failure. Remember that whole fiasco? I don't believe in failure, but what has happened?
And he had, and speaking of availability, he's had some availability issues.
Right, exactly.
It's just amazing. You know, I hate to say back in the day, but back in the day, the stars, for the most part, were always available to play.
And what's that different? What about what Isaiah did in '88 on one ankle?
Yeah, they got so much more technology now and all this, but these guys can't. You know, Zion Williamson, I would move on from him. I would move on from Kawhi Leonard. Tyronn Lue was saying, well, we're just trying to hold on till we get Kawhi back. How do you know when he's coming back? And when he's back, how long do you think he's going to have it? My goodness, man.
Yeah, he's had a bizarre career. I mean, think about it. He was Mr. Anonymous when he's with the Spurs at first. It was like, who is this guy? Oh, my goodness, we're going to give him the MVP because he held LeBron to 30 points a game, you know? So that's where he started off. It's like he's supposed to be this defensive stopper, the LeBron stopper and all that stuff. And then, of course, he eventually emerged into the star player because of attrition. Everybody retired and all that. But then that didn't last long because, like I said, that one injury in the game, the series against the Warriors. And then, of course, he had the thigh situation after that. And that's when he said, I don't know when I'm going to come back. And they were trying to rush him. And that's when he said, get me out of here. So think about it. How long was he a star for the Spurs? 1 year, maybe?
Yeah. And he got this knee thing going. I got a knee thing going. I was at physical therapy today. Bro, once that knee goes, it ain't much you can do. Ain't much you can do about that. So you are never going to be able to rely on him. But Mike, we don't have much time, man. But in the East, a team you used to cover, the Cleveland Cavaliers, off to an amazing start. It took the Celtics. They won their first 15 games before finally losing to Boston. I mean, this team is for real, man.
But here's the thing, though. We get to it with their star player, arguably is Donovan Mitchell, right? And we've seen Donovan Mitchell on these teams that had great starts, great regular seasons, and then everything falls apart. We're talking about his days in Utah. Remember that they were the top seed at one time, and Snyder got no criticism. They failed miserably in the playoffs. And of course, Donovan had a falling out with the Stifle Tower, and then that whole drama with the Stifle Tower rubbing all the microphones during the pandemic and all that stuff, and basically everybody blamed him for shutting down the NBA. So he had that time in Utah where that kind of ended unceremoniously. And then, of course, now with Cleveland, there's some people that say, hey, he put some good stats, but is he really reliable in the playoffs? So that's what they still have to deal with. Is Mitchell going to be able to get them over the hump, or is this going to be another one of these? They look great in the regular season, but playoffs comes, nothing. So,
yeah, but they never looked this great. And you're right, because they've lost in the first round every year. That's why J.B. Bickerstaff is coaching in downtown Detroit now and not Cleveland.
Right.
But they are off to a terrific start, 16-1. The Celtics are looking like the Celtics, unfortunately. But I give them their props. They're playing great ball, man, and they're going to be tough to deal with. So you got Cleveland, Boston, Knicks are off to a good start, and Orlando 9-7. Miami's in the fifth spot at 6-7. So the East is not looking to be quite as strong as it normally is, because we got question marks about what's going on in Milwaukee, They're 6-9. Now you know the Sixers not as bad as 2-12, but I don't know how good they're going to be when they get everybody back. Because as you were talking about earlier, there's so much garbage going on there.
Well, I mean, but you know what Bill Parcells would say, you're what your record says you are. So
Yeah, yeah, and that's a lot of ground to make up. Even
yeah.
though we're early in the year, they are already 12 and a half games behind Cleveland and 11 and a half behind Boston. So we will see about that. But if you don't have that locker room in order, it's going to cause problems.
Right. And then, of course, style of play. Because once again, we got to look at what happened with Adrian Griffin, who had that above 500 record. That's probably the last time the Bucks were looking good. And
Right.
then, then they looked like they were mediocre the rest of the season. Of course, once again, people want to sit there and take shots at Doc about his coaching. I'm like, once again, are we going to start pointing at our friendly? Some people say, hey, he's such a good guy and he's friendly and his story is just so amazing. But come on now. You guys, for some reason, got rid of Adrian. Then all of a sudden, when things didn't work out well, rest of the season and then in the playoffs, all of a sudden now you're not really getting along with Doc. So to start to wonder who is the absolute blame for this. Some people want to say, well, Dame Lillard messed up all the chemistry, or Middleton being hurt. They haven't been the same since he went down. Think about that. When he got hurt in that playoff series, he hasn't been the same. He hasn't come back with a vengeance or anything like that. So
I just read today he's starting to ramp up.
Yeah.
For what's that? Whatever
exactly.
That means.
He may never get back to that level he was
right
in the playoffs when they won it all in 21. So
right, because he got knees. I don't think Kyrie will ever get. I keep saying Kyrie, but I mean Kawhi.
Right.
Middleton and Zion. I don't think Zion is ever going to be able to sustain his play. When he's out there, he's healthy. When he's healthy and out there, he's effective. But hey, Mike, we just got a couple of more minutes. Anything you want to hit on before we get out of here?
Let me see. Well, I don't know. Well, with this game, oh wow, 1918. Okay, so with this game, will the streak stay alive for Russell? Since my one-on-one exclusive interview with him, he's still undefeated. So I needed to keep winning so I could, be his lucky charm. But other than that, just doing this coverage and all that. As for the NBA, you can't really get too engaged in it now. Same thing with football. Still early. But yeah, we're at the midway point for football. So, of course, we got all the drama going on out here with the football team, with the Niners, teetering around 500. There's even people saying, hey, man, it might be time for Shanahan to let it go. So people are starting to turn on him now. So we'll see with this game and the two teams that I actually covered, the Packers and the Buffalo Bills. So that's what they have the next 2 weekends. So we'll see how they come out after that. If they come out positively, there's still a chance to right the ship. If they lose these two on the road in Buffalo and Green Bay, respectively, it's going to be a lot of turmoil over in Santa Clara. So we'll see.
It could be some. We got weather here, so if it's snowing here, it's probably snowing in Green Bay, Cleveland. You know the deal. It just comes right on across.
Right.
So
well, yeah. Well, see the thing about with Buffalo and Cleveland, you get not only the lake effect snow, but you get the Canadian stuff because Canada's right over for both of them. You got Windsor, which is close to you guys, and of course, Ontario and all that stuff over there and there. So you got that by Cleveland, and in Buffalo, of course, you got Niagara Falls. So yeah, they get a different type of snow. I know it's like colder where I was in Wisconsin, but the snow, the lake effect snow is no joke.
Yeah.
So all you guys that get like 1 or 2 inches in some of these areas, you're like, oh, this is horrible. No. We're talking
go buy up everything from the grocery.
Right. You get feet over there. So, so that's the thing about it is that, you get all these sports things are wrapping up. I mean, even with the MLS, you got that the playoffs are going on there. And let's not forget, the Columbus Crew is still the defending champs, and they have a black coach. So that was history last year when he won. So he still has a chance to repeat. So you got to keep an eye on that. And then, of course, we have the number 1 pick over here with the Sharks, Celebrini, and he just had a dramatic night where he got the game-winning goal in overtime. So they're happy in San Jose that the number 1 pick is like getting it done. So that's the one bright spot. And then, of course, Chicago last year had Bedard. So they had the number 1 pick last year. So the young guys are looking good. But Chicago has our guy, Popeye Jones' son, Seth, who just went on the injured list. So I don't know if his career is trying to wind down because he hasn't looked as good in Chicago as he did in Columbus.
Well, I'm
and Vander's hurt too.
The end of this game. But Mike, good to get it back going, brother.
Absolutely.
Until next time, for my great friend Mike Roberson, I'm Rick Hampton. Peace, everybody.
Peace.